Hey everyone, today's assignment is Truman in the Cold War. A lot of you are doing the TCAP today, so be sure to get this done after the TCAPs. I gave you most of the week to get caught up, so now we're back to getting assignments done today and tomorrow. And today's assignment, Truman in the Cold War, is covering why did President Truman think it was necessary for the U.S. to get involved in the Korean War. If you remember, after World War II, the United States foreign policy was containment. They were trying to contain communism from spreading. So in 1950, the North Koreans, which were communists, and they were influenced by the Soviet Union, invaded South Korea, that was democratic, and they were supported by the United States. So if the foreign policy was to contain communism was spreading when North Korea invaded South Korea. That meant that communism was spreading. So with the United States foreign policy, they had to follow through with that, and they wanted to contain communism. So they wanted to push back the invading North Koreans, and they wanted to push them back into North Korea. That's why the United States got involved in the Korean War. It wasn't a direct conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union, because Soviet Union soldiers weren't actually fighting. The Soviet Union was helping out North Korea a little bit, maybe with weapons and things like that, but they weren't directly fighting. So it still wasn't a cold. It was still a Cold War. The United States wasn't fighting directly against the Soviet Union. They were fighting directly against the North Koreans that were communists. They were fighting against communism. So for this assignment, you're researching, and responding. For the reading, you go down to Truman and the Cold War reading. Make sure you read this whole thing. It gives you some background on the situation, and gives you some of the early Cold War conflicts in Europe. And then it talks about, let me see, in 1950, like I talked about, the North Korean army crosses the 38th parallel and invades South Korea and starts the Korean War. The 38th parallel is a longitudinal line that they picked that line to split North Korea and South Korea. It still splits North Korea and South Korea today. It's a line. It's an imaginary line. It's a longitudinal line, and that line was established after World War II, when the United States and Soviet Union were kind of splitting up. Who was going to be communist and who was going to be democratic. Okay, so there's the reading. That's the first part. So research there's Cold War, Truman and the Cold War research, and for Truman and the Cold War research, there are 2 sites, and the different sites will answer different questions on the worksheet. To access these sites, you need to hit, for my Mac, it's Command, and the little hand will pop up. I think for a PC, it's Control. But if you do that, the website will pop up where you get your information for the worksheet, for the research. And then the second website, just make sure it's working. I'm going to hit Command or Control on your computer. Control and left click. And that's working. So it will show you the 38th parallel is this line that runs in between right here. And it will show you where North Korea invaded into South Korea. So it will show you different points in the war. Okay? But there's the 38th parallel again. Alright. And then you see the Yalu River separates North Korea from China. Alright, so then we get to the third part, which is the research, the response sheet, the worksheet. And you can see that questions, so it will tell you exactly where to get the answers. Use Site 1 on that research sheet to answer the following questions. Read paragraph 2 of Truman's speech and then answer question 1. Read paragraphs 10 to 16 and answer 2 and 3. 4 and 5 are still from Site 1, and 5 and 6. And then part 2 uses Site 2 and answers all of these questions from Site 2. The homework, it says homework assignment, but it's still part of the assignment. Imagine you're President Truman's press secretary. It is June 26, 1950, and the president has asked you to write a statement for the media justifying U.S. military action in Korea. Drawing on examples from the Truman Doctrine, write a press release explaining the justification for United States intervention in the Korean War. Be sure that your statement answers the focus question, why did President Truman think it was necessary? So there's 3 parts to this worksheet. Okay? It should be pretty clear. If it's not clear for you, if there's certain questions you have about this, make sure you email me, call me, text me, whatever you need to do. And I will talk to you all later. Thanks. Bye.